see the U.S.-Russia relations under the Trump administration?
I think it's too early to tell. President Trump, of course, wants to have a more close relationship with Vladimir Putin. He's said that many, many times as a candidate and now as president. Fortunately, in my view, that others around him have a different view. They're much more skeptical about Vladimir Putin. They think they need to push back on him. And so does the U.S. Congress, because the U.S. Congress passed a new legislation on sanctions that make it very difficult to lift sanctions now. So the reality is that the rhetoric has been all about rapprochement and new relations with Russia, but the actual policy looks a lot more like the Obama policy towards Russia.
How do you think the U.S. should react on the Russia's meddling in the elections, in particular all connected to the hacking of the emails? What should be the proper reaction?
Well, I supported what the President Obama did in terms of his kicking out Russians and new sanctions, but I would have gone farther. I think we should have gone farther with more sanctions. And now we need to wait until the investigations are done. And if the findings of those investigations show more evidence of meddling, and every week we learn something new, then there needs to be a tough response, because we cannot allow this to happen again in the future.
Do you think that the RT and Sputnik and media like that should be registered at the foreign agents in the U.S.? And what are your take on that?
It's a very complicated question because we do have a very strong First Amendment right. But at the end of the day, I believe those organizations are instruments of Russian power to project the Kremlin power. And so I do think they should be registered. Now, it doesn't mean they should be closed down. I want to be very clear about that. People confuse that. I think they should be allowed to broadcast. I just want Americans to know who is the owner of that information that is being propagated. And most Americans don't know that right now.
You know, the Ukrainians were always concerned about Mr. Trump due to numbers of reasons a lot of people in the US are, in particular regarding Russia. Now they're trying to build some connection with Mr. Trump. To what extent it's necessary and it's possible to trust what you get from particularly, you know, his administration and him, if we know that there is some kind of a difference? How trustable?
That's a hard question, and I don't have an easy answer. I do know that for him, it's all about personal relationships. So meeting with him and having meetings with him, as your president has done and will do in the future, is the right thing to do. And secondly, I do trust his team. I know many of the people on his national security team, and I trust their instincts with respect to Russia. And so work with those relationships too, especially in the Pentagon and in the White House.
So, and finally, to what extent Ukraine is a question for the U.S. administration while they are dealing with Russia? And you know, now again there are talks about providing defense lethal weapon.
For the provision of lethal assistance, except for one person, and he happens to be the President of the United States. So where that debate ends, I do not know. With respect to Donbass, I guess I would just say I'm not optimistic that there's going to be an easy solution there. I'm skeptical about this new idea of peacekeepers that Mr. Putin has floated. And at the end of the day, Ukraine is a sovereign country, and the decision about whether there should be peacekeepers or not in your country fundamentally should be a decision for Ukrainians, not for the UN Security Council, not for Russia or the United States.